Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
What strange, spooky stuff have you seen? Once when I was in the desert, there was a telephone pole. On it looked exactly like a 10 feet tall bird of prey, just eyeing me down. It was about a good 5 minutes of walking, which felt like forever, just to see that it was a transformer that looked weird. None of the other poles had it either. Sounds dumb, but it really did look exactly like a gigantic human-sized hawk, and the head even seemed to follow you too. Really interesting illusion, since it also hit all the primal parts of the brain that gone, "You're about to be eaten by a bird." A year or two later, when I was going to take a picture, it was gone, which added a strange air to, "It was right there, I tell you." And before you tell me to go to /x/ for this, I want real stories, not "I smelled the rotten meat and copper, and my best friend was turned into a skinwalker, and then I pulled out that gun from video game and blasted it." Dude, trust me.
Back in the 90s, a friend and I were traveling down the 101 through northern Cali when my truck started overheating. We stopped in a small town in Humboldt County in the late afternoon. The only repair shop in town wouldn't be open until the next day, and we didn't have enough money for a hotel room, so my buddy and I decided we'd just go find a spot in the forest to camp for the night. We drove outside of town as far as we could, and then walked down from the road to a small clearing we found in the forest. Everything was fine until it got dark. We had built a fire, and we were just getting comfortable when, all of a sudden, we started getting hit by rocks that were being thrown at us from the surrounding darkness. The rocks seemed to be coming at us from different directions, but we could also hear them bouncing off the trunks of the surrounding trees, which made it impossible to tell exactly where they were being thrown from. I became irate and started screaming threats and insults into the forest. The only response was more rocks. Whoever was throwing them made no sound whatsoever the entire time, which scared the shit out of me because I had been screaming vile insults toward them at the top of my lungs in the hopes of drawing them out. We even put out the fire to try and make ourselves less obvious targets, but it didn't help much. After about 15 minutes of this, my friend and I looked at each other and agreed without saying a word that it was time to GTFO. We stumbled back up the hill to the truck in total darkness as we didn't have a flashlight. They seemed to stop throwing stuff at us once we left the clearing. In hindsight, I believe we stumbled upon some kind of illegal grow operation, and the farmers were trying to scare us off. We didn't know it at the time, but we learned later the area we camped was pretty dangerous at the time due to all of the illegal activity. I guess we're lucky that whoever it was didn't respond to my threats.
Be me. Frequently night walk. Been down every road and trail around. Love nature. Always taking pics of cool animals and trees. Sometimes I will have a couple drinks while walking around. Out one night feeling good. See a very large, strange frog at the center of a patch of grass at the end of a dead-end road. Making eye contact. Get a weird feeling about this frog. Sit down near him and just sit for a minute. I say to him, "Frogs can have some beer too." Then I pour a little out onto a leaf next to him. Ask if I can take his picture. Carry on with my night. Next morning, leaving for work, and as I exit my house, I feel something lightly strike my arm. Look down, and there is a tiny frog that just jumped off my door and onto me. Next day in the boiler room at work, when a little frog comes a-hopping out from under my tool cart, take him outside and release him. So on and so forth every day for a week, frogs in strange places.
I've never told this story anywhere. I grew up in the Caribbean, on a small island called Anguilla, part of the British West Indies. It has a couple small, uninhabited islands nearby, one right off one of the island's points called Anguilla Island, or Christmas Island. The island is slim and long like an eel. There is one called Dog Island and one called Scrub Island, which has an airstrip for drug smuggling built in the 80s. The other island is called Prickly Pear. Often tourists will go there to party, for day trips. Most people don't stay overnight. There's a small structure right off the main leeward side beach, with some built-in benches and chairs, a built-in bar and snack shack, all open. Also an abandoned metal boat on the windward side of the island. I went to sailing school for a few years. I did scuba diving for shipwrecks and other reefs. Long story short, I was a very outdoors person, fishing often. When I was about 13, I decided to take my small sailing boat to camp on prickly Pear overnight. The whole day was fun. I caught and cooked a couple red snappers over an open fire, explored the beach with my metal detector. At nighttime, I usually would have slept in a hammock outside between two coconut palms. However, I had a really weird feeling like I was being watched and decided to sleep inside the shack. It had a doorway and a counter with a small opening, so it had some shelter to it. Starting at around midnight, I could hear a lot of excessive splashing and laughing. It sounded like a young female voice. I was weirdly scared yet excited, but next thing I knew it started to call my name, to come in the water. I was so scared I thought my heart was going to come out of my chest. I didn't even get up to look. Stayed alert as long as I could until I eventually fell asleep and sailed home the next day. I asked some old islander sailors and fishermen who said they would have made me disappear if I had gone out.
Never seen anything too strange out in the real great outdoors, but I've experienced some weird shit in the public park and urban forest near my house. One at the top of my head happened a few years ago, mid-2021 I believe. The park is mostly in a couple of valleys that intersect, carved by streams that flow into wetlands. There are bridges over the park, so there's always noise from cars going over them, plus usually the sound of kids playing in the playground above outside the valley. Once, I was sitting at a roofed picnic table next to a stream eating lunch and drawing when it suddenly occurred to me I stopped hearing cars, kids, or birdsong. I could hear low, barely audible sounds of the nearest bridge vibrating. And then, suddenly there was some distant, distorted shouting seeming to come from every direction at once. And the moment that stopped, a strong gust of wind shook every tree around, rustling the leaves. I then heard something crunching and tree limbs snapping directly above me, but I couldn't see what it was because of the roof. I also heard something fall on the roof, but when I got up to look, there was nothing there. Normal sounds resumed after that and nothing more particularly weird happened, but it put me on edge, so I finished lunch quickly and went back home. In retrospect, it was probably just a weird fluke of a pause in traffic, etc., happening simultaneously, someone yelling in the distance and it getting echoed and distorted by the valleys, and a strong wind shaking the bridge and trees, some branches falling from a tree after that. Not sure how to explain the branch then not being visible on the picnic table's roof, but it's probably nothing. The bridge actually collapsed early the next year, so maybe the vibrations continuing with no traffic on the bridge was actually a warning sign.
This was around 4 years ago and took place in Mendocino National Forest. Anyone from this region of California knows that there's a whole lot of tweakers, and these tweakers like to spend time in a woods. I've usually not had any problems, but let's just say I wouldn't want to be a solo woman out there. However, it's a gorgeous forest, and if you know where to look, you can find solitude. Pictured is the airstrip north of Lake Pillsbury from a different trip to this forest. I was deep in a woods with a buddy of mine I'll call David. We were camped off of a dirt road way off the beaten path, and we'd had to creep up it real slow. It was around 1 a.m. and David was getting ready for bed in the tent while I stowed some gear in the truck, which was between me and the road at the moment, with the tent behind me. I paused, thinking I was hearing something. It sounded like an engine and really squeaky shocks. A little unnerving at 1 a.m. this deep in a woods, but I thought to myself that it's public land, and if people want to do hoodrat shit out here in the middle of the night, then they've got a right to. My attitude towards whoever these people were changed pretty quickly when I spotted them. They were creeping up the road, lights out, towards our camp. Instinctively, I turned off my headlamp just before they came around the bend into the clearing where we were, and just watched them from behind the truck. My rifle was leaning up against the wheel. I hear David go, "What the fuck?" inside the tent, and start shuffling around, no doubt looking for his pistol. At this point, I'm at about DEFCON 2. If someone pulled up on me with their lights on, I might have been a little more charitable, but the fact that they rolled up on me lights out in the middle of the night was setting off some alarm bells. Two dudes exit the truck and start walking towards us. They're skinny, but I can't see much more than that, as the moonlight is really faint. They've got lights and something else in each hand, not sure what, but I didn't want to find out. At that moment, I decided it was now or never. I came out from behind the truck, holding my rifle by the receiver in my right hand, an M1 carbine for the commandos in this thread. In the excitement, I forgot to turn my headlamp on like a total spurg. "What's up?" I asked, trying not to sound either threatening or scared, probably failing at both. They freeze for a second, then without a word turn around, get back in the truck and drive off slowly, continuing up the road. David finally extricates himself from the tent and asks what the hell just happened, and I tell him. It's at this point that we realize the truck drove up the road maybe another 30 seconds before the engine just stopped. We weren't sure if it was just being muffled by the brush or if they had killed it. Either way, we were majorly sketched out and decided to call it quits. We basically just picked up the tent and tossed it in the truck bed and wedged it in with some gearboxes before beginning the long drive home. My rifle was in my lap, and David had his pistol in his coat pocket. We bumped down the dirt road faster than we probably should have for around 2 hours before finally exiting the woods, the whole time checking over our shoulders for the truck. We only stopped to pull over at a rest stop and quickly cased the weapons before continuing home. We got there around 6 in the morning. Overreaction? Probably, in retrospect, but at the time it seemed pretty sketch.
My grandpa owned a few hundred acres in New England, and I would spend my entire summers as a teenager wandering through the forests there. One year, when I was about 16, I decided to head up to the furthest northeast corner of the land, where I'd never been. And on my third day out, I came across 2 rows of trees, almost like a old road, so I followed them. In the wrong direction. They just ended at an old rock slide, so I turned around and went back in the other direction, and eventually I found a big clearing with a huge willow, and next to it is an old chapel with a broken-off steeple. I do what any 16-year-old would do, and immediately drop my gear and head inside. It's really boring, just a rotting empty room, but as soon as I stepped in, I felt like I'd just snuck into my parents' room. It was really oppressing, and I kept almost hearing footsteps next to me. So I just fucked out of there less than a minute later and started heading home. A few days later, I convinced my grandpa to come with me to see it, and we eventually got to the old road and headed north back to the old chapel. But when we got there, the only thing in the clearing was the big willow. There was nothing else, no debris or anything like if it collapsed. All we could find was what could have been part of a foundation. But there were a ton of blackberry bushes, so we gave up pretty quick. I got yelled at for wasting Grandpa's time. We found him in that clearing years later, dead from a heart attack, they said, just in his folding chair at his camp next to the big willow, facing the spot where the old foundation was.
My wife and I were dating at the time, and we were invited to go camping at Bluewater NM with her family. A group of about 10 people. We set everything up just off the shore of the lake, and another group of friendly people but strangers, about the same size, was camped a little ways down the shore. I felt a weird vibe from the whole area during the day but brushed it off. My wife and I are not drinkers, so we were sober at night when shit went down. Our group and the other group were each doing their own thing at night, mostly playing card games, eating and having some drinks. We kept hearing what sounded like a little girl whining. The youngest person in our group was my wife's 18-year-old little brother, but we assumed the little girl must be in the other group. The whining did sound a bit distressed, like asking for help. It got worse, and eventually someone from that group came over to ask if there was a little girl with us, because it sounded like she needed help. Nope. Both groups are full of adults. So with the other group, we gather flashlights and start searching the area, thinking there's a little girl somehow out here who's lost, scared and confused and needing help. There's a field of grass between the lake and the forest. The little girl's sounds were very loud, and we quickly found the source. In the grass field in front of the forest, we all saw the same shit. This tall thing, taller than anyone in our groups, it was skinny and completely white. Head to toe, it was white. I couldn't make out features or clothes. I described it as well as I could, but as soon as we saw it and were watching it, the little girl noises continued like crying for help, and 100% from that thing. Everyone was quiet. We all looked at each other, but being in such a large group felt safe to advance a bit and check it out. As we approached it, it looked like it was gliding backwards towards the forest. It seemed like it was still facing us, just backing away as we approached. When it got into the forest, we lost sight of it and couldn't hear a little girl anymore. Both groups discussed amongst each other how weird and honestly creepy it was, before mutually agreeing to keep an eye out for the rest of the night. The vibe was weird after that. Nobody felt like playing games or drinking, and it was late enough to go to bed, so everyone went to their tent for the night. I wanted to leave but felt safe with my wife and her brothers in the tent we were in, and didn't want her family to think negatively of me for leaving. I couldn't sleep at all that night, and neither could the guys in the tent with me. Later at night around 2 a.m. we heard it again, same exact noises in that field behind us. We refused to leave the tent and left to get back to the city immediately the next morning. I have never in my life witnessed anything that compares. Sometimes the topic comes up with her family, and it still creeps all of us out. Not one person who was there that night can explain what we all saw and heard.
Normal weekend overnight hike. As I rounded a ridge, I noticed the forest get much lusher and darker than anywhere else I'd been so far in this park. Didn't pay it much mind, figured it was just some microclimate and enjoyed the change of scenery. Then I felt the dread, kept going, scanning for bears and cougars more intently, as that's usually my subconscious alerting me to a real threat. In my extra scanning, I noticed a path through the trees off the trail. Didn't appear frequently trafficked as the duff was undisturbed, but the trees were missing enough for it to stick out. The dread I had been feeling entering this area had been replaced with alarms screaming in my head, but I had to see what was down there, since I was planning on camping nearby. Graveyard, not on the map. Paid my respects by reading all the graves that were legible and wishing them well. When I returned to the trail, the forest seemed friendlier, and I took that as my sign that I was in the clear. Researched it when I got home, and it was a known graveyard, but just wasn't placed on the map for whatever reason. Wish I had known about it so I could just chalk it up to paranoia, but I had no idea it was there. But I sure felt it.
2 stories. First one. Be me about 16 years old. I was walking down a country road around twilight. Not in the US, different country. Come up on this old man walking slowly a few meters ahead of me. As I caught up to him, he slowly turned his face and greeted me. I slowed down to his pace and walked with him for a bit. Kino talk. I remember it felt very oddly warm and very loving for a stranger. Asked me my name, whose family I was. He knew my grandpa who had died in war. Told me his name and where he lived, etc. I walk along, past an old burial ground. There was a gravestone about 5 yards from the path with some flowers, white and yellow daisy-like. Sudden breeze and the flowers danced wildly, waving in the breeze. I glanced at the gravestone. It had the exact name of the old man I just met, and the village he mentioned he was from. It said he died 13 years ago. I turned around and walked back along the path to where I left the man, but there was no sign of him. Came back home, told my grandmother. She said she knew the family and he was a very kind man who had helped our family a lot and was a mentor to my late grandfather. To this day, when I go back to visit my old country, I take flowers to his grave and sit there for a while, even though I never knew the man. Second one, be me, just under 18 years old. Had a very strange dream one night. I was in some sort of foresty area and went down these steps into a sort of space. Technically, If I went down the steps, it is underground, but it did not feel like it. Felt airy. There is a sort of surreal light and air, not exactly foggy, but sort of. I see some statuettes randomly lined up in this cave, some sort of stone idols. Suddenly, an old dude appears and says, "Oh, you are here. We were waiting for you." His behavior gave me a vibe like he was some kind of great-grandfather ancestor of mine. I have no recollection of what he told me, but somehow I was left with the impression that these idols were important, and that somehow I was supposed to know about them. I sort of drifted off in the dream after that. Woke up, but somehow this stayed in my mind. I was having dinner with my mom and her mom, my grandmother, and told them about this dream. Both of them turned completely ashen-faced when they heard it. It turned out that my uncle, Mom's oldest brother, had exactly the same dream when he was my age. I spoke to my uncle a few days later and compared what he saw with mine, and everything seemed to be exactly the same. The steps going down, the idols, the old man, and even, "Oh, you're here. We were waiting for you." It had been decades since my uncle had the dream, and he said it still haunts his mind. As it does mine now. I still have no idea what it all means.
In the spring of 2022, a friend and I went hunting for bears in the Umpqua National Forest outside of Tiller, Oregon. There remained a bit of snow, maybe a foot or two, and we ended up hiking to the top of a meadow, next to a spring. Waiting, I ended up losing my chance at a bear. After waiting several hours, when my friend ended up in a coughing fit, and the bear that was a good distance away at the bottom of the meadow bolted. That part is irrelevant. We ended up leaving shortly after, because it was late, and by the time we were almost off of the trail, it was sunset. We were maybe 200 yards from the trailhead when we encountered a couple who were just getting onto the trail. The man had nothing but a very small day pack, and the woman had nothing except a baby on a baby carrier on her chest. They seemed extremely nervous, and in my autism, I assumed it was because of the hunting rifle slung over my shoulder. The man shakily asked how it was going, and said it was going fine, just got done for the day. My friend and I kept walking, and I realized it sounded like they weren't moving, and I looked back, and they were just staring at us. When we looked back, they hurriedly kept walking down the trail towards the east. We encountered them at a split that occurs 0.1 miles from the trailhead. When we got to the trailhead, the only other vehicle besides our own was a blue Toyota FJ Cruiser with Idaho license plates. The car was completely empty. We drove off, and it really didn't set in how weird the interaction was until a half hour down the dirt roads. How strange it is they were getting on a snow-covered trail right at sunset, when the closest town, Tiller, which is only a couple of buildings, was nearly an hour of driving away. They didn't even seem equipped at all to camp overnight. I don't know what was going on with that, if those people are still alive or not. Pick-related, it's that area in the fall.
Late summer of 2020. Bad breakup, pandemic. Life is falling apart. Plan to cross the Dead Mountains alone. A 3-day hike in the Austrian Alps. The first day goes smoothly, if slower than expected. Day 2, the heat ramps up. I am exhausted. Nausea keeps me from eating enough. The thought of day 3 looms heavy in my mind. Terrain will only be harder from here on out. Nothing but bare rock. The rock shear rising up in front of me like an insurmountable wall. Decide to stop early for the day. Plan to set up camp near this scenic mountain lake. Pick related. Descend into the valley flanked by steep walls on either side. Not a soul in sight. The light is fading fast. Only flattish ground is close to these abandoned shepherd's huts. Finally finishing up with the night closing in fast. Dozed off, feeling feverish and exhausted. I shoot up suddenly. There are footsteps circling the tent. They are close. Unzip, crawl out, nothing but the pitch black staring back. My heart is pounding, weighing the options. After listening intently into the darkness, I lie back down. Footsteps again, then harsh barking echoing through the valley, sometimes distant, sometimes as if coming directly from the abandoned shacks only meters away. I keep lying there. I accept my fate. The cycle repeats in a vortex of echoing dread. Eventually, I pass out. The morning comes. I wake up alive, pack my shit fast. The valley is as empty as when I made camp. The still water and deserted huts. I descend, trying hard not to think about what lies behind.
Backpacking trip. 3 days, roughly 35-mile loop. Nothing crazy, pretty typical. Second day. Afternoon, the sun was still high up, around mile 20. Stepped just off trail to water some grass. Fairly sparse pine forest. Not overgrown, rocky, or anything. Plenty of room all around. I feel like someone is behind me. Guy says, "Excuse me," as if he is trying to walk past me. Turn to tell whatever weirdo is trying to watch me to fuck off. All I say is, "Dude," as I look sideways and over my shoulder and realize there is no one there. Because of course there is not, right? Existential dread. Hiked the other 15 miles back to the car without really stopping. Did not bother to filter water, snacked while walking, no pics, no bullshit. I heard it clear as day. This wasn't some noob scared of the woods thing. It wasn't the wind rubbing one tree against another or a bird rustling around in a bush. This was human speech. The scariest part was when the sun was getting low as I approached my car. It wasn't the lack of sunlight that scared me, but the dread that something might happen with the car. It was my lifeline, but what if it didn't start? What if it was stuck in the mud? What if I had a flat? I had also never been so scared for so long. It was hours, and the entire time I felt like I was running from something. That was probably in my mind. I didn't see anything chasing me, but it sure felt like it.
An assortment of random stuff that spooked me. Nothing really noteworthy or whatever. I love these threads, cool stories. 1. A time when I wanted to test my new night vision out in the mountains. Not too far west of Denver. I drive off on a small highway and park at a pull-off. I had a mountain house or something, but figured I'd go down a hill to a creek to get water, then boil and filter, etc. There's a creek at the bottom of a pretty steep V-notch in the terrain, probably about 100 feet elevation drop from the highway. The day was bright and sunny in my car, but once I got down to the water, it was nearly dark as night. Lots of tree cover. I didn't like that. I felt watched, so I got the water and booked it. Later that night, I went walking out into the forest with the nods and multiple times didn't notice deer until I was almost right on top of them. Shined an IR illuminator out and saw dozens of eyes staring back at me from multiple directions. I felt unwelcome and left. 2. Various times camping where you can't help but be sure that you're hearing footsteps outside your tent. That's pretty typical, I guess. No big deal. 3. Once when I was a kid, I was staying at grandparents' mountain cabin with my cousin. We look out the window in the middle of the night and see 2 mountain lions ferociously fighting, like totally tearing into one another. Only thing I can compare it to is the videos I see of grizzlies ripping on each other. The next morning, there's no trace. I chalk it up to seeing things. On that same trip, I was awoken near midnight and remember running outside as fast as I could. In front of me was a herd of what seemed to be hundreds of elk stampeding through GPA's property. I remember being there with my cousin and a couple uncles. Fell down in the snow and propped myself up on a stump as they thundered by. I can still see it in my mind. The moon was full and it illuminated the elk pretty well. The only problem is I can't verify it with anyone else in the family. Odd. Probably just a very vivid dream. 4. I saw a skinwalker out in Nebraska, driving to a reservoir in the pitch-black night. We almost ran over this guy sprinting away from us down the road. Just as we're going to hit him, he starts flapping his arms and becomes an owl right before my very eyes. That's all. Again, nothing super scary. Being outdoors is fun. I feel like I'm forgetting something. We'll post if I recall.
Not supernatural, but spooky at the moment. Summer 2016. Hiking in Saguaro National Park. Signs all over the place closing off certain trails due to killer bee infestations. Warnings that if you get swarmed, run as fast as you can, and they will drop pursuit after a quarter mile. Bypass 2 or 3 closed trails with these signs. Passing through an area with trees on either side of the trail. Winds pick up. Distant buzzing sound. Slight concern.mp3. Winds pick up more. Buzzing becomes louder and sounds closer. Wind starts whipping the trees around. Loud, angry buzzing all around me. Drop my pack and prepare to sprint down the trail. Buzzing suddenly subsides, as do the winds. Trees sit still. My face when it was quite literally just the wind.
Nothing paranormal, but I've got 2 good stories. I'll start with story 1. Be me, 28, with one of my best friends and his girl. Camp on that flat part to the left and pick. There is an RV park about 2 miles away at the base where this photo was taken. I came to this spot last minute because the previous camping spot was literally being gate-kept by some Filipino mail-order bride who put a gate over a public road. We decided to come here to this backup spot since we spent 3 hours driving. We get to the lake at 4 p.m., hike 2 miles and camp off of a trail. Gather wood, cook dinner, break out a box of wine, all normal camping shit. His girlfriend goes to bed in the tent. We stay up getting drunk and smoking cigs. Run out of firewood, oh well. We grab some wood and keep an insanely small fire until it goes out. Still have a liter of wine and we figure we will kill it to make packing out easy. Hear leaves rustling and twigs snapping. Turn our headlamps on and we see 2 weirdos in their early 20s, one of which is carrying a corgi over their shoulders in the pitch dark. No light at 1 a.m. in the morning. We look at them, say hello, and they kind of sheepishly go, "Oh, hey," and walk off all sketchy. Dog as silent as can be. They continue past our campsite and walk to the trail. We do not see them again. I still have no idea what they were doing since the trail looped around and we didn't see them again, which is really strange. Didn't realize how messed up it was until the morning when we realized that they walked just straight into the woods with no light wearing regular street clothes. We assumed they were walking to one of the cabins, but the nearest one was like 2 or 3 miles away, and they would be walking on pretty rough terrain. Maybe they had a canoe or some shit, but also weird, because we would have seen them earlier in the day when we were set up. Excuse potato quality of photo story number 2. Camping with the same friend minus his girl. Hike up Camel's Hump in Vermont in November. Stay at one of the many tent platforms near LT. Start cooking meals super windy, so very small fire. As we start settling down and having a beer, notice 3 headlamps crossing the ridge in picture. We turn on our lanterns so we do not freak them out. 3 small boys, one visibly coughing and ill. They do not say a word. Dad comes up a while later hauling a big-ass Coleman tent in a 70-liter bag. The man was a champ. Kids talking amongst themselves, playing around with sticks and stuff. Talked to Dad for a bit. Set up a tent, see and hear their butane stove turn on in the tent. It was on for 6 minutes and then all the lights went off. Weird enough, out of 6 tent platforms, they chose the one closest to us. Next morning, Dad's a bit more social and talks with us and says he came from Massachusetts and was doing some hiking with his kids. Says he has a van that they travel in. Asks us about a shelter or cabin on the long trail. We tell him it is snowed in more likely than not. Dude says he is going up it with his kids. Advise him not to since it is probably locked. Does it anyways, oh well. Walk back to the parking lot and see his van. It is a small SUV packed to the brim with what looks like all their shit. Still convinced that dude murdered his wife or took the kids and was hiding them. Middle of a school week too when he was up there with them.
Okay, here it goes. Be me, archery boy. Buy a bunch of books and start watching videos about how to make bows and arrows. Eventually, I decided to go hunting with my shitty homemade self-bow and arrows. Cannot be fucked to care about land or hunting license, just wander into the woods with my shit for like 4 hours. Cannot find shit. In hindsight, I was probably upwind and super loud scaring away all deer. Hear shouting a ways away. Emerge from the woods to see a huge open plain, shouting getting closer. See a buffalo running over a hill across the plain. 5 or so men on horses chasing buffalo, shouting some Hindi-sounding phrases, but with strong text support accents. Watch one nail the buffalo in the side with his hornbow, met by Indian cheers. All ride to dying buffalo and begin chanting. What the fuck? You're not allowed to hunt buffalo in this area, and I don't think they would have taken kindly to a witness.
Get into fly fishing. I usually go with a mate. Check out the new stream. The whole time I am there, have the feeling of being watched. Keep catching something moving in corner of my eye. Sometimes I hear movement too. Friend oblivious to this stuff, he does not do much outdoors stuff, nearly steps on snakes, does not spot wildlife standing off in the trees, etc. The day ends uneventfully. Go back to the same river next weekend on my own, slightly further up. Walk down the access road for around 1 kilometer, a bit over half a mile for the US crew. Decide to jump off the access road and bush bash to the river. Come to clearing that almost seems manicured. Tall trees, no sticks, etc. On the ground, just really green grass. Oddly cleared, not really like most of the Australian mountain forest in the area. Clamber down into the river and fish. No bites, so after 2 hours I climb back up and start to leave. Get to the cleared area and hear the distinctive click of my net magnet breaking contact and feel a slight tug on my backpack. It hangs off. I spin around thinking it got caught on something. Net nowhere to be seen. Check bag. Net not on it. The figure must have fallen off in the creek, and the magnet connector has just kicked around on my bag whilst I am hiking, which has made the sound. I searched the river for around 1 hour. Flow was minimal, so no way it got swept away. I cannot see the net, so spend the next hour retracing steps of my walk-in. Find nothing. Eventually go home. Tell workmates about the net going missing at work Monday. Decide to go back that afternoon. And look. Start to walk down the access road to search. There, clear as day, hanging on a slim sapling is my net. There is no way I missed it last time. I walk closer to the net and notice it is hanging at a weird angle. I go to lift it. The sapling is threaded through the center of the net. No way it got caught like that and pulled off my bag. I try to lift the net up and off of sapling. The sapling is much taller than I am. Standing on tiptoes cannot lift the net off the top of the sapling. I bend it over and snap sapling. Loud, audible crack as I break sapling. Suddenly I feel like I am being watched. Because I am weird, I call out thanks for bringing my net back. I hear heavy bipedal footsteps run away down through the forest. I nope out of there.
B10 at Bro's baseball game. New England. So forest comes up 10 feet from the edge of the field on one side. Farmer's field along the other side. Bored. Wander down a gravel path in the woods. Feel weird. Scared of nothing. Want to run back to Mom. But I am a big kid. I will power walk back to Mom. Start to turn around. Hear a strange sound off to the side. Like breathing super hard through a stuffy nose. Black bear like 20 feet away. Full speed back to Mom. Say I saw a bear and ran away. Mom thinks that I think I saw a bear. Other moms convince her that I probably saw a cow, since there's a farm a little ways away. Adamant that I saw a bear. Local paper's next issue comes out. Bear sighted on the road leading to the baseball field. I'm the smuggest 10-year-old at the next baseball game.
Go camping. Nighttime comes, lying in bed when I hear horrible sounds. Whispers, steps, shuffling. Realize it is my mind misinterpreting regular sounds. The creak, the wind, my own movement in my bag. Realize I do not know anyone that has died in the woods, and I know a lot of people that go outdoors. Realize I do not even know anyone who knows anyone that has died while outdoors. Realize I do not know anyone who knows anyone who knows anyone that has died under mysterious circumstances while out. Think about how ghost stories are a weird quirk of human nature. Wake up to blissful peace and quiet, fresh morning air, spectacular views. Smile.
I've got a couple stories. Camping in the Bureau of Land Management land just outside of Joshua Tree National Park. It is probably 10 p.m. We are all in bed getting ready for an early start. Suddenly I hear it. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Footsteps. I look over at my friends wordlessly. Their eyes are wide open and they hear it too. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The footsteps sound human, like someone slowly moving towards us. Very quiet, intentionally soft steps. To me, they sound like bare feet. Crunch, crunch. This fucking thing must be mere inches away from the tent at this point. Despite the softness of the steps, they are definitely in twos and sound human-like and large. We grab the knife and all three rush out the tent door with flashlights. No one was around. We scan the desert, and it is just flat gravel and creosote. Another time, in Kings Canyon, hiking the loop around Zumwalt Meadow. My friends are both on mushrooms, I am not. We pass two Nordic-looking identical twins, tall, long, straight, bright blonde hair, matching outfits of red tracksuits. They walk past us wordlessly, moving in the opposite direction. My friends comment on how they were identical twins. I think nothing of it. Walk 5 minutes further down the trail. The exact same identical twins pass us moving in the opposite direction once again. What the fuck? The entire center of the meadow is a bog. The loop is over a mile long. They sort of sneer at us as they pass the second time. I am instantly taken aback. How the fuck is this even possible unless they literally sprinted around the entire meadow? Both of my friends on mushrooms are so high they do not even realize we passed the same people twice somehow. I start mildly freaking out trying to explain to them what just happened. This one's not as spooky, but cooking bacon at 1 a.m. Hear a deep growl from 20 feet away but cannot see the source. Throw a rock towards it. Eat bacon in the tent. Be me, solo camping on a nearby military installation reservation or range area, the middle of winter, little fire going, drinking whiskey. It starts to rain a bit, so go in my tent, fall asleep. Wake up to the sound of voices and movement around my tent at around 4 a.m. 2 men arguing outside my tent. Can see their shadows, desperately trying to get up, but my body would not move. Oh man, do not piss on his tent! Fuck it, dude is off range. Finally snap up, pull my gun out and start shouting to get the fuck out. Go outside my tent, swinging my pistol around. No one is there. Probably just a dream, but a couple years back, 2 guys were found murdered out there, one wrapped in a carpet, the other just domed next to him. Could have been them or the numerous other training-related deaths that have occurred there. Either way, I appreciate his buddy asking him not to piss on my tent. Cheers.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.